my top 10 is the good man himself, Evan Renaerts of Two Guys and Hockey, joining us for some hockey talk. I'm not crazy for thinking it like this, right, Evan? I mean, good Lord, we've had this was a crazy trade deadline for 3 days. And, it all started when you get a few pieces moved up from Vancouver and Winnipeg, and then everybody started coming out of the woodwork. So what was your thoughts on the trade deadline, man? Because I thought it was nuts for 3 days.
Well, first of all, man, hey, thanks for letting me jump on with you here tonight. As you can see, I'm sporting a Vegas shirt here tonight, man. I'm going to say right now, to top off the show, 5 rock stars for your top 10. Don't agree with them all, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But as much as I don't agree that Vegas is number one, I'm going to tell you, man, they had the best trade deadline. And as much as they've been faltering and playing 500 hockey, they are setting themselves up for a good run, even if they don't have Martinez and Stone come back for the run. So, but yeah, by the way, I thought we had the best intro in hockey at Two Guys in Hockey Talk. Man, you rock a Vegas show. So if you're watching, guys, you guys got to make sure you come back, click on, because this seems to be the place to be here, man, tonight.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, the Stanley Cup playoffs right around the corner. Hockey playoffs is like the best atmosphere that you could get amongst any other playoffs outside of the NFL. I mean, so, and now living up in Denver, man, I'm in Colorado territory, so I know they're going to hate me for this one, but let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I'm sure you know of John Viveros over at Hot Take Hockey, man. He is pissed with Trevailing because it took this long for him to really get going with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, I'm not crazy for saying that this could be a number 10 team, because Edmonton, I love the Adam Henrique move, but the only thing that scares me is their goaltending and their efficiency at defense. I'm not crazy for saying that, but I think for Toronto, like, am I gonna at the very least get another celebration up out of them? I mean, what are your thoughts with them?
Okay, so first up, just going back, so everyone realizes that you got Austin Matthews. Now, we were just talking about him when you were bringing in that information there on him. I want you guys to look at him in his playoff. So in his games, he's got 0.88 points per game in the playoffs, but he's a 1.14. He is a regular season boy, even Austin Matthews. However, what is different is in 50 games, he does have 22 goals. So you're looking at a guy who's going to score, let's just say, a goal a game. His first 2 seasons in the playoffs weren't as much. So Austin Matthews is a little bit of a no-show to me, man. Marner, I have a feeling this might be the year. Marner has something on his back. I know a little bit behind the scenes because I know a few people who know him. He wants to prove people wrong. In fact, actually, a former guest a couple seasons ago, Cassidy Sobe, who unfortunately she got injured. She was playing in Finland, probably one of the best goaltenders in goals against and save percentage you're going to find. She plays against him, and she just says, this guy is incredible. Here's the problem. They have not built a team to protect him. They want him to be out there playmaking, and they haven't built a team to protect the playmaker like Marner. So yeah, he's setting stuff up, but when it comes to playoffs, you got no room to stick handle out there, as of course Edmonton has seen over the years. So I'm with you. I don't even have Edmonton in my top 10. Edmonton. I don't have Toronto in the top 10 at all. I just don't think they got it. Their goaltending just is like, let's just say they're going to have to go with Wool if they're going to actually even have a chance. And he's going to have to play above his head these playoffs. So, and on the back end, you cannot keep relying. And Joel Edmondson, sorry, folks. I had concerns about him from the beginning. The guy is too slow. He'll play zone defense, but the problem is he gives up too much gap crossing that line.
Yeah, no, and he really does. And that's why that I'm like, Toronto, I think, what was it? Only 2 moves that they made. I was just like, that's not good enough, especially when you're trying to build depth for the playoffs. And so I'm with you on that one. And again, hopefully, because again, I don't bash on players when they have contract extensions. Right. I'm critical of them because if I'm paying you this much, you better show up in the playoffs too. I mean, it's the same way I
Absolutely.
felt about Max Pacioretty for like since he's been with the Vegas Golden Knights. They should have got rid of him 2 years ago. And so I'm like, oh my God. But
So, hey, say something should be interesting about Trey Living. What's different from when he was in Arizona or when he went over to Calgary and took the lead? Really, this is Trey Living. This is the kind of team he builds. And that's just the way he is. That's the way he does business. So he has not really built the team. He's just been trying to kind of navigate. I'm actually shocked that they kept Sheldon Keefe in. I thought he'd be gone. Let's not look at contracts anymore. They're dropping coaching contracts. They don't care. They did it with Sutter. They did like Woodcroft right now, the best guy on the market. So expect him to go to Pittsburgh this offseason. If not, he's going to Ottawa.
yeah, that's going to be an interesting one because again, next season, man, the off season is going to be absolutely insanity. But let's go through it at least with these top 10. So after Toronto, I've got the Rangers. Now, again,
Sweet.
Peter Laviolette proved me wrong because I thought after Gerard Gallant left, this was not going to be an offensively aggressive team. He proved me wrong because I love Mika Zibanejad, I love Chris Kreider, and I love a lot of their top liners. So they go and get Alex Wenberg, and I honestly think this is really good depth for offense. But do you think Peter Laviolette has at least what he's got in him with his schemes that this team could get past the first round?
So I'm actually looking at this as a good trade deadline. I consider them the number 2 winner after Vegas, actually. Getting Wenberg was a good depth move. I know some Ranger fans are all worried. They're concerned that Zibanejad should be that second line center and it shouldn't be Wenberg. Wenberg was second line in Seattle. He's not going to be that. He is going to fill that depth role, and he's going to likely be working a lot with Capo. I like his veteran experience. I like what he brings. And the boys, Lafreniere and Capo, are playing better. Lafreniere is playing now like that second line winger that everyone was expecting him to play. But what surprised me is seeing him play on the right wing. He's actually been very good playing on that right side, yet he was naturally a left wing coming up. But the reason that I have him so much higher than you do is because of Shesterkin. And that's as my buddy and co-host Pavel says, I like to rub him and rub the Ranger fans. I call him Shesterkin. But I'll tell you, he does not stink when it comes to having a good save percentage, except for this year. That's my only falter that I'm worried about their goaltending this year. But I think that Quick can bail them out. He's been there. He's done it. And he's having a really good year.
Yeah, and honestly, it's good to have a mentor there. I mean, Vegas knew that. I mean, the fact that they had like a dual tandem, but having Jonathan Quick there, it's important to have at least a veteran experience there because as a good mentor, it gets you out of your head, get you clear, get you focused. I mean, that's the most important thing. And I love Shesterkin. I do think that since the change from Henrik Lundqvist to Igor Shesterkin, I mean, Rangers were going to be in good hands. They were going to be in good hands, but it was a matter of time until he finally found his groove. So Dallas, I mean, I was going to rank Dallas a little slightly higher, but after the trade deadline, kind of had my thought of why they're at number 8. Now, I love their defensive core, and picking up Chris Tanev was a great move because I could trust Miro Heiskanen can shoot from the back end, but if I'm needing a defender to block shots, what is Pete DeBoer's identity? Defensive. I mean, like we look at the NFL, in the NFL head coaching, if you get a defensive coach, their tendency is to get defensive. So in Pete DeBoer's mind, because he is a defensive guy, this is something that the Dallas Stars, they could easily give fits to other Western Conference teams. What was your thoughts on the Dallas Stars? Because I still do think there's still not a lot of offense outside of, Jason Robertson and a couple players.
Okay, this is interesting. So my co-host Pavel over at Two Guys in Hockey Talk, he actually had them right up there for the final this year, I believe. He's been a believer of them, and as much as I'd like to just run him through the ringer on this kind of stuff, I think he was right. I have not wanted to admit it. Dallas has come through. I actually think when they made that Tanev move, that was what they needed. They have a shot blocker in Tanev. Hakanpää is a great defensive guy. You have your right side on both of those guys. That's the only piece. But when you got Heiskanen and you got Lindell, Of course, you got Ryan Suter. He's going to give you that depth down lower. And Thomas Harley has been a total surprise and an elite level contract player for them. So I think that they got a depth. My concern is if two players get hurt. If they have one, maybe. If they have two, but then, Sagan, he's there. He's expensive. Ben's playing the third line. What's interesting is he's playing with Logan Stankoven, who was the number one scorer in the AHL with their farm team. And by the way, no one recognizes this, but they got Maverick Bourque, who's now the next highest player, also on their farm team, that likely, depending on what happens in the playoffs, they have another guy to bring up. And so if you think about it, outside of Robertson, you got Hintz. Hintz is a good playoff guy. Pavelski, he always comes through. Matt Duchene, you got the wily veteran. Wyatt Johnston, I mean, what a pickup. And Sam Steele, great adept to throw down on your fourth line. So for me, I actually see this as a really good move. And I hate to admit it, and don't tell Pavel, but he might be right this year, and they could be cup bound.
I mean, I could tell you, when I watched that Western Conference championship between them and Vegas, I've said it before. I said, Dallas is going to be back next year. And they were going to be back in a big way because there's unfinished business that's involved from here. Vancouver, I want to think they're a really good team. I really, really do. I love their speed. I love their offense. I've also loved Quinn Hughes, their captain, bringing a defensive mind. But what scares me, and yes, we've got the news, Thatcher Demko is hurt. And I've said to people, the last thing you want is an important piece, especially your goaltender, getting hurt, because when teams figure that out, they're going to crush it. And it normally does happen this way because we've seen it with a bunch of teams over the years. Are you still kind of sold a little bit on Vancouver? What's your opinion on that? Because me, I'm like, I hate to say it, but I think they might be fool's gold going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this Vancouver situation, I think they got the right team. I think they have all the right mixes. Lindholm has not turned out like they thought. But what I'm concerned about is they don't have playoff experience. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that are going to say that's hogwash. They'll call bullshit on it. But I don't agree. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on the show.
No, you're good.
I don't. We're in Vegas, dude. But what I would say is I think the difference is going to be Hughes. And believe this, Hughes and Pettersson. That's going to be the difference. Yep. Do they have space to do what they want to do? Will Hughes show like Makar did a couple of years ago when he came out and when they won the cup? That is the biggest, but I just don't see them being a team that is made for the playoffs when there's a lot more clutching and grabbing going on. And so frankly, I have them. Where do I have them listed in my? Gee, man, I'm looking at number 9. I have them at 9. I'm just looking at my list. I made my list on the air while you were doing it here. So I'm saying, 9. And I only give them 9 because they had such a great start. But now they're back to 600, 650 hockey. So they're playing normal. And as the games get tighter, I think we're going to see as the season goes on, what's really going to come out of that.
It's a different atmosphere. When I went on JT the Brick show, and shout out to him, man, because he put there on his show intro, my voice recording, when I said January, February, March, if you're not prepared and you don't know what your identity is, you're going to get smoked, because I put Vegas on that back burner. And it's true. You could be one team from October to December, but when January, March comes around, you better find that identity. And look, it's been 13 years in the making. First of all, for those that think that, that's gibberish, Vancouver hadn't even had the big team since 2011, since Roberto Luongo or Ali Pizza. Come on now. What are we talking about? But number 6, what's interesting about this is, Carolina, they did fleece the hell out of Pittsburgh. And you think Toronto right now is like literally mad with Treliving, and they were all like, oh, this is Kyle Dubas's fault. Kyle Dubas is doing the same thing in Pittsburgh. So I'm like, they get fleeced with the Jake Gensel trade, but I think this is solid. But let me be honest with you, because we have seen Rod Brindamore several times in the Eastern Conference, and they never get over the hump. Do I feel like Carolina, to some degree, do they have it or do they fall short again?
Wow. I just was going over this yesterday, getting ready for our show this week. And so just a little disclaimer, I'm going to be touching in on this. I actually see them in the final this year in the East. I think they're so much better. Getzel has now been activated. I'm not sure if it happened today or yesterday. Interesting enough. I mean, let's go through their depth, especially up front. Sebastian Aho. They got Svechnikov going. They got Teravainen, Kotkaniemi. They got Getzel. Kuznetsov will be good when he's in a depth role, not playing that top line. They got Nekas. They got Jordan Staal is going to be great on that third line. Jesper Fat, Martin Hook, and Seth Jarvis. And that leaves like one guy, maybe like Jack Drury. I mean, you are in good shape up front. I think they're the deepest. Brendan Lemieux, like you mentioned, Stefan Noesen. So, I mean, they're doing well. What I'm a little worried about, and this is where I always say they're more suspect. I'm not as strong on guys like Slavin as everybody else when it comes to playoffs. I think that they're a great midseason team. I think they're good to start and they're good in the mid, but I'm a little concerned what they're going to be like in the playoffs. But long as goaltending, that's the only thing for me. Will their goaltending hang in? That's going to be the concern right now. What do you think is going to happen? Because I don't think, man, their goaltending is going to let them win the final, but I think it can get them at least to the conference final.
Yeah, I mean that's good positive hopes for everybody out there in Raleigh because I mean again they're coming off of like Peter Mrazek and then you have Antti Ranta and then now having Frederick Anderson and him being back is very crucial. But what's the best version of Anderson we're going to get? It's going to be left to be said from there.
So I have to say, for all my Carolina fans, I got about 20 or 30 out there. That was for you guys. I gave you a little shout out.
So here's the thing. So I think this is interesting, but I've always had the best respects for Winnipeg, but this is a completely different group now. Tyler Toffoli and Sean Monahan. So the two of them now they haven't had a lot of games together like Toffoli had with Alex Iafallo, but they were clearly clicking, in their Calgary days. Now they're in, and even in, Montreal. But Tyler Toffoli, to me, feels like the missing link that they finally found after Patrick Laine. And I feel like because you're not going to rely heavily so much on Mark Scheifele, even though I love him as a lethal shooter, but you're going to need somebody that's an ace in the hole at some point. Does Winnipeg maybe make a little bit of noise in the Western Conference? I feel like they do because you got to do this right for Connor Hellebuyck, man. He's my favorite goaltender right now in the league.
Wow. You got to admit, I mean, give it off. Did we not start the season? I just was going back trying to pull up some clips and stuff as we're getting closer. I now after trade deadline, seeing what we've talked about on our show. And the one thing that I recognized is that we were all talking about Winnipeg being done because of the Scheifele and Hellebuyck and what was going on there. And I mean, to see what Cheveldayoff has done and moved this team around. Mark Chipman has money. That's not an issue. Stop worrying about the fans. Bettman timed it bad, but it was preset. He didn't just show up, all the fans and their conspiracies in Canada. He's not moving your team out. They just are trying to push, and the narrative just turned out to not be good because Bettman, man, he just is not good at dealing with media. That's my
Oh,
here.
yeah.
But Monahan, I thought the Monahan deal for me, what they gave up was a good piece for a good solid run, and they got to do it now. They got to show Hellebuyck. They got to show Scheifele. They got to do something for these guys. Nick Ehlers, man, you got Kyle Connor. And their defense. I just heard another talk show this morning talking about them, and interesting enough, they called their defense a bunch of pricks. That's what they called them. In other words, if they truly are a bunch of pricks, then this season, this playoffs, that might just be what the doctors ordered for that team.
I love it. I love it, man, because and here's the other thing. I mean, a change, a change in direction because you're moving on from Paul Maurice and you got Rick Bowness. who I thought, I didn't think Bonus did a bad
Yeah.
job, but I just didn't think that was the group last year. Now I feel like, okay, this may look like the group. So let's see what Rick Bonus has on the back of it, the back of his pocket. But I had Boston at number 4. And the reason of it is because, Montgomery, man, I didn't think Boston to this point was going to literally play as great by the time he arrived. And again, I loved them as a regular season team, but then they turned into foosball last year. But I think they learned their lesson respectfully. You get Pat Maroon, you get Andrew Peak, you get some guys that are at least depth worthy. So does it kind of feel like that, Boston, they learned their lesson and they're going to get themselves back on the right page?
I do see. It'd be very interesting if we get a Toronto Boston first round. I see them getting out of the first, but I don't see the second round. I just think that loss of losing Krejci and Bergeron is going to affect them. They've done well. I think they needed to do something at this trade deadline to solidify something. I'm worried about that forward depth. They looked exposed in games I've been watching over the last 3 weeks. They've had some good games, but they've also let a lot in. And I think this trade rumor that went around and this whole piece where potentially LA was looking for Omar, like, you got to wonder, how's that going to mess with the psyche of your goaltending? Yeah, Swayman's great, but then what if he comes out? Is Omar going to be ready? Like, how's he going to feel with that? I don't know. I think that it was a bad deal. They shouldn't have even tried to press it. I think it will affect their playoffs, but I think that they can easily get through the first round.
Yeah, man, because honestly, Omar, he saw the narrative. The second you end up seeing it, you better be nice to him because, players see everything. They see everything. And so they figure that out. That affects your playoff hopes. Okay, so I live now here in newly Denver, Colorado. So me and my wife officially moved here from Vegas. Love my roots.
Woo!
But I've been to Ball Arena. I was at a game against the Chicago Blackhawks because I thought I was going to get an SC top 10 from Connor Bedard, but he failed me. But the thing about Colorado is Colorado wants to get back into the cup. You could see how many of those moves they made. Sean Walker, really good underrated defenseman. I think Casey Middlestat is going to be a serious problem going into the playoffs, man. How do you kind of, rank this? Because again, if Gabriel Landeskog comes back in the playoffs, I'm not giving my hopes up because of injury reasons. That's very tough, especially in a lower body injury. But how do you see the Avalanche moving forward in the West?
Yeah, I got him ranked number 2 is where I got him placed. The only reason I don't have him number 1, I think the Sean Walker deal, Bowen Byron is, the move was great. It worked out well. Talk about loading up in Buffalo. Middlestat was what they needed. Like, I am shocked that they got that deal done, and they're setting themselves up really well. But Bowen was not going to be that shot blocker. He wasn't going to play that tough hockey. I will give this. I'm not a big Walker fan for a high price, but I think I get where they're at and I get what they need. And I think he's the right mix. It's chemistry. We see that on when you're talking about World Cup, Canada Cup, Olympics. When you see teams, it's that mix. It's not always the best players. And Walker's really good. He doesn't give up a lot of gap space. And he's pretty good at not letting those guys get by at that blue line, as opposed to someone like Kurt Russell back in the day. Great. He was great at shot blocking and had high number. It's because he let him get into his D zone too often. But Middlestat coming in, I'm with you. Landeskog, I do think that Landeskog coming back will be a good depth, but I think you almost have to resign yourself to third line unless he's showing that he's got that extra edge. But I'd be worried about re-injury. I'd be worried about some of the other pieces to it. But this is where I'm going to throw a wild card in for the playoffs. Look out for Drouin during the playoffs. That would be my wild card for them. That guy has all the skill and talent. The only part that has not connected is up here. We started this season, last season with Willie Palov out in the East Coast, and he talked about it. I watched Drouin. Druin, just for those that don't know, actually played with McKinnon. I used to follow them when they were 13, 14 years old, which my co-host will tell me that's creepy. Following too many of these young guys. Just last year, right? I'm at the Brick Invitational Tournament in West Edmonton Mall, and I'm watching all these 9, 10-year-olds, and they're like, "What you doing?" I'm watching all these 9, 10-year-old boys playing out on the ice. But I will say, years ago, I actually got to see Jack Hughes and Cole Caulfield actually play in the Brick Invitational Tournament. I wrote them in my iPhone just as a little side note, and I said, these guys are going to be something. And I'll tell you, Druin and McKinnon, they got chemistry. And that's the piece. The only thing that I'm worried, Jake, is Georgiev. Will Georgiev be able to actually stand on his head these playoffs? If he can do it, I think they have a chance to get out and be in the final and take out Dallas.
Yes, thank God. Somebody is on the same page, because I've been hearing it all over Denver. Okay. They all have been saying the same thing about the consistency from Alexander Georgiev. I'm the same way because, again, this is why I had him at 3, because I love the roster. I mean, again, they lost pieces with Andre Burakovsky and Nazem Kadri, but at least Middlestad kind of fills in a little bit of that Burakovsky thing. I'm not sure of the Kadri, but he fills that in. But yeah, Georgiev, I mean, you've got to stand on your head. If you don't make the consistent stops, because again, I've said this, round 2, Vegas, Colorado again. And I feel like Vegas would end up winning that in 7 because, again, it's a consistency. So Florida, number 2. I think Florida found what they were missing from last season because, again, I think last year they did focus up on defense. Now, again, they lose Radko Gudas, who I didn't think was really a big pivotal player, only for a certain time, but you saw him shrink in the final. But they got Vladimir Tarasenko, a real good depth offenseman, and they've got Kyle Okposo. This was really interesting for me because I'm like, wow, Buffalo's captain, that just told you Buffalo, they are focused up on young cores. They keep selling me like they're going to make the playoffs. But Okposo, how big does that got to mean now for Florida on their offense? Because they finally, I feel like they found the missing piece and they want to get back into the cup as well.
Wow. You imagine, just think of that lineup. You got Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe. You got Rodriguez, a nice, good third-line guy coming in. Okposo, who's going to be able to play in that bottom 6 back. You got Nick Cousins, who's just a total idiot out in the ice. But you know what? He disturbs them out there. And then you think on the back end, they're not sexy at all. But somehow they get the job done. And their goaltending, I don't know why people were talking about trading the contract over a year and a half ago. They couldn't get rid of Bobrovsky. Now everyone loves him. And Stoller he was a third during the pandemic. Stoller was the actual guy that kept getting passed around by everybody during that period, including him and Forsberg, right? Go figure what's going on there. These guys, and they're already been playing playoff hockey, I believe, probably about 60% of the season already.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Florida, like I said, it was only a matter of time. I said to people, I'm like, look, usually first year on those contracts for goaltenders is not always sexy. But by the time that you're in year 3, year 4 in that contract, you are getting what you pay for. So, again, I don't think it's fool's gold with Bob, but, there's parts of it that is long. Same thing I say about Georgiev. As long as you're consistent and you make the important stops, you have a chance to make it there as a finals team. Now, this is why I have Vegas as number 1. No, not as speaking as a homer, but here's the reason, is because you got Hannafin and Tomas Hertl for cheap, and you still have a first-round pick. It feels like this organization, for the last few years, they love to trade away their first-round picks to go and get quality players for a right price deal. So, again, I thought the one that really that irks me still, is the Nick Suzuki trade. Because you're going to tell me you're going to sell yourself on Max Pacioretty while we have a young kid with Cole Caulfield that's going to be a problem for the next few years? I thought it was outrageous. But outside of a lot of them, I think they've made the smoothest moves. Now, Manta, he needed a change of scenery, because even when I talked to Dan Holme of Locked On Capitals, he said this guy has not found his groove. But luckily, 56 games, 20 goals, so you're getting something out of him. But maybe Vegas's juice is just what he needs. And when Hurdle comes back, I think you're going to get a really good playoff caliber player, because being next to, Joe Pavelski and them and that team, he was really lethal. But then the other thing, if you're shutting Stone down for now to save him in the
Yeah.
playoffs, that is a cup team that knows what they're doing, because Bruce Cassidy knows how to, function with his young guys. But as we start to move on, this team, it's different when you look at the regular season than when you look at them in the playoffs. I feel like by that point, they're going to be ready to roll. What's your thoughts on Vegas?
Whoa. That's a great take. Can I just say this? If Stone makes it back, let's just say not the first game, I have a sneaky suspicion if he was even healthy on the first game or close to it, he won't be back, because there's going to be too many people going off on conspiracy. So it's not going to be till at least the third game minimum that he would come back. If I actually think this is much more serious, I think we'll be lucky to have him back for a second round. That's going to be the thing, though. If he's not back, that changes the complexion of this team. For a team that started great coming out of the blocks, and Martinez not being back there will also. But again, maybe he makes it back in there. I just like to say a couple things. First of all, so there is people with conspiracy all over around this LTIR thing and with what they can do. They're playing within the rules. They're playing within the rules. Very important. Now, everyone's like, well, but when they get the playoffs, the guy just happens to come in. Kucherov, it started with. It already happened. Stone coming back on that day, it felt off, but guess what? They still have to have doctors that are NHL guys that actually have to say that they came back. It's like that Bettman doesn't want a team to win in Canada. Hogwash. There's 7 teams now out of 32, maybe 34 within the next 3 years. I mean, let's face it, the percentages are low. The cap issue is more. People want to be where it's warmer, less taxes. There's a whole bunch of issues around that. So with the LTIR piece, if you want to change it, by the way, NHL, what you do is you make cap compliant in the playoffs, but you can sit someone and still be cap compliant. So you can make a decision. So if Stone came back, someone's got to sit with more cap. Just make it that way. And I think the next collective bargaining, that will come into play. However, you don't want to be without Stone. You don't want to be without Martinez. It just so happened. Now, why do other teams give them good players and give them these good? Why did Calgary give Hanifin when they could have got so much more? But why did they give Tanev when they could have got so much more out of Dallas? Who knows, man? We don't get it. But some reason, Brad McCrimmon, and I got 2 people. So we had Leah Hextall, the first full-time play-by-play for ESPN and Bally Sports, play-by-play announcer, shared with us a couple seasons ago on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. She said, right, she's out of Brandon. Actually, Ron Hextall is a cousin of hers. And so they're very much a hockey family. And she said, Brad McCrimmon, we know him from the Brandon Wheat Kings. I actually lived there years ago. And during that period of time, I'm telling you, that guy knows how to wheel and deal. He acts like it's a junior team, but it doesn't matter. He can act like any which way because it works. I'm sorry, I'm on a rant. I got to tell you that more guys look for the next guy to come in. Mark Hunter, who has been with the London Knights, he will be the next guy, and he will be like Brad McCrimmon. You're going to find the NHL realizing you got to be smart as a GM and work the system. It is what you got to do. And there's no choice if you really want to actually have a successful team. And you said Nick Cousins, right? They gave up Nick Cousins. Yeah. Giving up Cousins. Who cares? Suzuki. You talk about Pacioretty. Name me another NHL team who just throws away players that they overpaid for. They just lose them. They don't get enough back, and they still keep winning. And players that feel like they're stabbed in the back, and they keep getting more players. I'll tell you why. Because they win. Players want to go to a winner, and as long as they're winning, they'll be good. Pavel and I say this. Wait till the Vegas is not winning, and then you'll see a difference in the players that want to go or not. They just want to go to a winning team.
Now,
sorry, it's long-winded.
No, did you hear that for all the people in the back that are literally crying about all of this? I'm not the only one who feels like this. Because look, dude, I got sick and tired of hearing this crap where it's just like Vegas is using the LTIR again. Yeah, and so is 16 other teams that are smart enough that win more games. You want to be a better team? Be a better team. Get a better front office. Get a better coach. Get better players. Like, enough of this crap. Like, they found a way to use it and use it the right way that's to their advantage. And that's easy. Like, I mean,
That's
you think
sports.
it's that easy? Yeah. And this is the thing. They are a cap compliant, or like it's a cap compliant league, much like look at the NFL. The NFL is king for this because they got the contracts, but they got the coach, they got the front office. If you're mad at somebody, just like I said early on the show, where Tiki Barber was yelling at Saquon Barkley, how about you go yell at Dave Gettleman and yell at Joe Shane and the Giants? They're the ones that are the problem, not Saquon. He doesn't care for your crap. Like, this is the kind of thing that I say for hockey fans because they want to feel like Vegas is the spoiled children that gets all these play. And I'm like, they're the ones who keep dumping them. So I'm like, are we really spoiled? Like, but we find a way to make it happen. So, all right.
It's
so
crazy.
That's my top 10. Now I'm curious to hear about yours, man. Let's have it because I am very curious about it.
Okay, so I'll just break it down. So number 10, I got Boston. I don't think they're going to repeat what they as far as the season, right? We already know that, but what I don't think they're going to repeat is that early round exit because they're not facing Florida, right? So they're going to be good there. I see Vancouver in at number 9. Now Vancouver is because they're not playoff ready. They're not a tough enough team. They're not built for the playoffs. When it comes to number 8, I got Winnipeg, and I'm telling you, it's the same reason. I am worried about them, and that's why I'm worried about that first round. Could they get taken out? Who are they going up against? Now, what if they're up against someone like Colorado? Like, I mean, like, what if you get that saw off, right? Or Dallas, or, I mean, it's going to be a tough road moving in. Next up at 7, I got Carolina. I do think Carolina has a chance to be in that Final Four, but I'm worried about the goaltending. That's the only reason I put them lower. But I just got this feeling. I shouldn't have doubted them last year, and I did. And they showed how good of a team they are. Now, I got Edmonton at number 6. A little different than you. I think that, and by the way, Vegas, this will be the difference. I do not think Edmonton's ready for their cup. However, if Vegas and Edmonton meet in the first round, I think that's going to be the difference. If Vegas gets taken out by Edmonton, I think Edmonton is the only team that can take them out. That's my difference. And I think if they get by, they're going to get healthier. And I think that they're going to be a tough enough team and deep enough to take out any of the other guys. But Edmonton, I'm worried about the same as you. They don't got tough enough on their defense. And that's going to be a thing. You're not going to outscore in the playoffs. And by the way, they went deep up front, but running Troy Stetcher on the back end, they needed a top 4. They needed to move CC down, not keep Desharnais up top. The New York Rangers, I have at 5. I think that they are positioning themselves. They got more depth. I think the coaching is very different. Gallant was a different kind of a coach than they got this year. And then at number 3, I got Florida. Now, I know I'm not going east and west back and forth, but I got Florida at 3. I do think that I am always a little concerned about that defense. Will they still be able to make that kind of run? And I am worried about how much playoff hockey they've been playing like. That's my concern with Vegas, why they've worn out a little bit because they played playoff hockey all year long. Number 2, I got Colorado. So I got Colorado ranked at number 2 and only because of Georgiev. And then at number 1, I got the Dallas Stars. I think that this is their best chance. And again, Pavel's probably going to hear this, so he's going to run me ragged tomorrow night on our show. But that's what I just think that Dallas has got what it's going to take. But I do think I have them ranked that way. But I think the difference for Vegas, you might be dead on if they can get past Edmonton, if that's who they face in the first round.
Absolutely, man. And wow, it's a hell of a top 10. I like it, and again, I felt the same way initially about Dallas, but then when I started to see all these moves start happening and they start for certain particular teams, so hard for me to even put because I wanted to put them in the higher rank because I knew I love their defense and I loved their experiences as well, because that's what's most important. So now we got both our top 10s. here's an interesting question for you because in post-trade deadline, there were a couple teams. Buffalo, I'm very excited about their core four defense. The other thing, New Jersey, they swap goaltenders and they go and get Kaapo Kakkonen. And, it felt like Vitek Vanacek was not the answer for them at the netminder, but they changed a few pieces. I felt a
Right.
lot like I felt bad for New Jersey because I did think this was an interesting team moving forward, but then they looked like foosball later on. So, who is your best, worst team that you're looking at um, with after the trade deadline that you're excited for next season?
Totally Buffalo. Totally
Yep.
Buffalo. I mean, yeah, when you look at that back end, like they long as Devin Levi can develop, unfortunately, they need a number one to go in there and work, like take like 65% of that load off of Buffalo with Devin Levi over there. But the back end, when you got Owen Power, you got Dahlin, you got Byron now. I mean, that's pretty good defense if you stop and you think about that. So with that, now I want you guys to catch this, okay? In their defense, when you have Dahlin, he is a left-hand D that can play right hand. You got Bowen Bryan, he can play both sides as well. Now, Jokiharju, he is a right side guy. Owen Power can play left or right. And then for your depth, you still got Cale Clegg. I mean, that's not bad to move forward. When I have Power and I have Jokiharju and I have Byron, and I have Rasmus Dahlin, I'm pretty excited about what I have there. And long as, now here's a key. Next year, I think a really big key isn't Zach Benson. I had Zach Benson, I think, rated on my Revs top 15 at number 4. I believe that was a steal for them. But Jack Quinn is a goal scorer. What will he come out like next year? But their team is good. I mean, think of it. How the age. Jeff Skinner is their old man at 31. Tage Thompson is still only 26 years old. Dylan Cousins coming in at 23, I think 23. I mean, if you walk through all your players, and we haven't even talked about Matthew Savoy, who's still developing, and if something can come out of him, I mean, you are looking at a heck of a team. And even right now, going into next season, when you're looking at the cap, I mean, the projected cap space for next year, they're probably going to have about $8.5 million with dealing with a few contracts. So that is my best, worst team.
Yeah, I'm with you on the same boat with Buffalo because in the end, I love, Alex Tuck because again, as somebody that I watched him up in Vegas, the one quality I loved of Alex Tuck is he was the only person that was willing to crash into the net and force the puck into the net. Like he gets aggressive up on offense. And that's why I'm like, if you get that mentality and you start building around it, because Jeff Skinner, to be honest, I mean, the guy seemed like he was a high quality player when they first got him, but as he gets older, it changes a little bit. But I'm excited about Tage Thompson, and I do think that if they get a lethal scorer next to them to build more consistency, I think you are going to get potentially a wild card or a third place team in that division. I think it's very possible that you could. Now, let me ask you this, because two teams we've watched in the playoffs for several years, Pittsburgh and Washington. Washington did the right thing because they moved off Evgeny Kuznetsov. They moved off a couple of players. So which means to me they're rebuilding, but they're rebuilding it in the right way. Because again, they can handle with the Ovechkin contract because he's going to retire a capital. But the question is surrounding with John Carlson. It's surrounding with a couple of other players, but they needed to get more younger juice and they needed to develop. They're doing the right thing. Whereas for Pittsburgh, you got no money. You got fleeced, not even for a first-round pick for Jake Gensel. And you've got your core three that you're not lasting for years, which is Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang and Geno Malkin. What are you doing? This is not the same Pittsburgh team who went back-to-back in 16-17. Things have changed. I've always said this, that since Fleury left, this has not been the same organization. So how did you feel about that? Because honestly, I'm on the side that I think Washington did a better job than what Pittsburgh did.
Well, okay. So first of all, before I continue, my co-host on Two Guys in Hockey Talk, Pavel, just made his comment there on YouTube, saying that Evan is a Pittsburgh Penguin fan. I grew up on Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. I followed him since he was 12, so I was another creeper of that young fella. And he talks about how I admit that that he was right about Dallas. I'm going to say that he was right about Pittsburgh. They're aging. I really thought that Carlson would not have the drop off that he had. I thought you'd still be looking at a 75, 80 point player. I didn't think it was going to be, I thought they were going to make a wild card and then you could go for it in the playoffs. But looking at this now, I think that this is a total mess. They got nothing back. Bunting is nothing. I'm sorry. If you are a Bunting fan, he's a great player. But I believe that they should have found a way to unload Riley right now. They knew they're not making a push. They're not getting into the wild card. And so I'm actually sitting here thinking, and I've been trying to look at this. What do you do if you're Kyle Dubas? Because you came in, they wanted to do something. They want to make money. You got these three best friends in Letang and Malkin and Crosby who wanted to retire together. Not going to happen now. I can't see it happening. Someone's going to go early. They're not going to retire and go off into the sun. So I actually think that this is going to be a really crazy offseason and a lot of serious talk, but it's up to those three. I think there's going to be a conversation. I think they're going to sit and say, what do you guys want to do? And they're going to let them make the decision. Do you want us to keep building? But Kyle Dubas didn't go out and get anybody to surround them outside of their top five up front and outside of their three defensemen. They're weak. They're really weak. And unfortunately, Kyle's going to have a lot of work to do.
I mean, I felt like by the time they got rid of, Brian Dumoulin and they lost, a lot of those guys, I thought, okay, this is it. This is finally the time. And then, oh no, they fooled us again. And it's just like, it almost kind of feels like, and I hate saying this, but this almost feels like the Philadelphia Phillies effect with Ruben Amaro Jr. Because it's just like, you still tell me that Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard are still going to provide the Phillies to get the playoffs? Hell no, they're not. Like, this is too old. This is not the 2008 Phillies. So, like, in the same aspect with the Penguins, hopefully they can get this right in the offseason. But, man, I just felt like they got completely fleeced and undressed, and they better make up for it in the offseason. But it'll be interesting moving forward. But appreciate you coming on, man. Evan, we've been waiting to do this, man, because, again, when Key, I give shout-outs to Key, man, because she's told me, like, you guys have got to collaborate on hockey because you both are on the same pages and you know what's going on. But for a side note for you, because I think you'd love this, because since you've been around the hockey world and you've seen a lot of these youngsters now become grown men, funny story for you is, like, my wife, her name's Cami. She actually got her name from Cami Granato.
No way. That's
yes. Yeah, man.
Yeah. The wife of Ray Ferraro.
Yep, exactly. And she's still there around in the Avalanche. So I've seen that. And then I told her, I said, Joe Sakic is still the GM over there. So you still got some familiarity in Colorado. But, man, it's a hockey town up over here. I know I'm in enemy territory, but still, I remind people, I'm like, you know who won the cup last year. So appreciate you coming on, man. Appreciate you. Man. Where can people find you as well for Two Guys in Hockey Talk, especially when I know Powell's in the comments and he loves to get at least a little bit of that showcase, man.
Yeah. He's my marketing boy. So you can follow us over on X. I call it Twitter now on steroids. So you can follow me at Renaerts. You can follow my co-host Pavel, the cat. I don't call him the cat because he's got cat-like reflexes like Felix Potvin, but because he's always got a cat in the background somewhere, sometime, and we learned that during the pandemic. So he's a great guy. You can follow him at hockey_2. You can follow us on Facebook at Two Guys in Hockey Talk. You also check out our website at twoguysinhockeytalk.com. You can check out some of our guests that have been on if you want to connect, follow, as well as you can check us out on our YouTube channel, all of our series over the last 4 seasons since we started our work. And appreciate, you guys just follow us on all the social media venues. And we appreciate anything you're doing. And by the way, Jake, we've been talking about getting you on the show. So
Yes.
I might have some openings in mid-May coming up. So I will send you out a note, and let's see if we can line something up on a Wednesday night with you.
Oh, I love it, man, because you know me. By the time we get that going, I'm ready to drop the gloves and I'm ready to just come on up on the show. I will say, though, man, because I'll tell you, next month I've got Kim Becker from Altitude Sports that's going to be coming up on there. So
sweet.
I'd like to hear her insights with the Colorado Avalanche, because especially with hockey playoffs coming up around the corner.
Do you have a date on that one? Do you guys have a date with her coming on? Specific?
Not quite yet, but I believe it might be the start of April. So I will definitely send that link up over to you, man. But
that'd be great.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on, and we'll definitely catch you soon.
Okay, as we say all the time at Two Guys in Hockey Talk, in the meantime and in between time, keep your stick on the ice.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you guys like, follow, and subscribe to get the latest from the show. Also, go check out a few of our coolest segments that we've had from previous shows. And also make sure that you stay up to date on the show on all platforms, wherever you guys find your podcasts.